Welcome to the final episode of our Descent into Midnight series, everyone. We're going to plunge into some deep discussion here, so buckle up and get ready right after these announcements. It's my birthday. I can do what I want.
Okay, everyone, it's Ryan's birthday, so I'm going to let those puns go this time.
Thank you. I believe this might be the last series, quote unquote, not really, that I will be doing puns, so...
Yes, I would like to say yes. It is the last time.
We'll see how many I can sneak in. You didn't ever say.
First and most importantly, if you haven't heard the news yet, One Shot Podcast Network show, Asians Represent, has been nominated for the Podcast Ennie Award. Also, former guests of the show, Senda and Andy, have been nominated for She's a Super Geek, which is another fantastic show out in the world. We will put a link in the show notes for you to head over and vote. There's lots of different categories, and you can kind of put them in order, I think, so you don't have to pick just one to vote for. Yep. But if you could head over and do that before the voting closes, I'm sure they would appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love both of these shows, and they are very, very deserving. And we really hope to unseat, I don't even know the podcast that has won the past X years in a row.
I think it's Ken and Robin Talk About Stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. So let's vote for them. The Asians Represent and She's a Super Geek, and try to get them to the top because
they deserve it, gosh darn it.
They deserve it. Absolutely. And don't forget, GenCon is coming up soon. So sign up for our panel for tons of fun with Grant Howitt and James D'Amato if you haven't already. Links are also in the show notes. And also, I am sad to report that my games at Chimera are still not available to sign up for. It is less than 3 weeks away, and I am getting nervous about that, but we will keep you posted as soon as they are ready.
It's review time!
Woo!
Review time! We need a song for that, too. We love reviews. And we also love this one from Easy Peasy from the United States on iTunes, titled, Very Good, 5 out of 5, would listen again. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to the Character Creation Cast since its inception. Every episode introduces me to a new system or actual play podcast I should be checking out. Blades in the Dark and the Magpies being a prime example. I also really appreciate the Character Evolution casts, where Amelia and Ryan break from their normal format to discuss tips and tricks for players to improve their gaming experience. Thank you for all you do. You're welcome.
And also thank you for listening.
And also thank you, yes.
And for the review. It was really, really nice reading that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I love when we get them in our inbox. Like, it really does make our day. Like,
it really does.
When I get a message from Ryan that's like, hey, look at it, we got a review.
Yep.
Yeah, people are so nice.
I know, it's so fun because I've got it separated out in Gmail and I can see that little number ticking up.
It's very good.
It is very nice.
So thank you very much. And with all of that out of the way, here's the episode.
Yeah, enjoy.
Our discussion episode. Last time, we created a unique group of characters for Descent into Midnight. This episode, we'll be discussing the character creation process and building our community. We're really excited to welcome back Richard and Taylor from the design team for Descent into Midnight. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves and remind everybody where they can find you and what you did with your character last time?
Yeah, so I am Richard Kreutz-Landry. I am an origami artist and a software developer, and I'm working on Descent into Midnight with Taylor and Rich Howard. And I totally forgot. Yeah, I need to actually talk about the character, don't I?
Yeah, you do.
Well, let's see here then.
Tell us about Shelley.
All right, so the terribly named Shelley is a collection of discarded clamshells in the physical world, made up of basically Amelia's character's family, which is not terrifying at all. They live halfway between the physical world and the Echo, and they have been watching their kin essentially disappear as their connection to the physical world has been severed for some reason. We haven't quite found out how that's happening or why. And that's important because the connection that they have with the physical world is actually important to keeping it from being encroached upon by this void that Ryan's character is keeping at bay, I guess, right? Was that the...
No, Taylor's the bubble.
Oh, okay. It was Taylor's character?
Yeah.
Okay. So Shelley's kin have been disappearing and their connection has been severed with the physical world, which is important because part of what's happening is as they do that and as they disappear into the deep echo, the physical world's walls are being pushed back.
That's not terrifying. I'm sure it's fine.
Not at all. Their home, their home is the boneyard because that's where they collect all their lovely clam shells. With the clams sort of being the equivalent of living computer parts almost, and they have a couple of interesting moves in the playbook. One of them is Heart of Violence with the option Stormfront, where essentially they ask their friends to hold them back, and whether their friends do or do not determines what interesting things happen from there. The other move is Hell's Heart, where they have sworn vengeance upon a wrong that has been done them. And in this case, it is their kin who are disappearing. And the consequence that they face is dangerous odds. And when they face dangerous odds because of this situation, they get cool bonuses.
Nice.
Very cool.
Taylor, how about yourself?
I would love to tell you about my character. So I am playing a character named Blurbs, who is a seeker. I am gelatinous and genial because I am the gelatinous membrane that separates our world from the Echo. I make like weird illusional or illusory avatars that I can, tunnel through reality and act through. And I compromise the outer bubble of our bubble city. I can project myself through the Echo to like see glimpses of the future, and I can bring that vision into life.
Oh, that's right, because Amaryllis, the spirit that you can see is like the future of a piece of sand inside of them that's going to become a pearl, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited about that character.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And Amelia, why don't you tell us about your character?
Sure. My character is Amaryllis. I was playing the empath playbook. I say playing, like I'm going to do something with this. So I was a little clam oyster thing with a sort of pearlescent shell, but also lots of teeth. It was a bitey clam.
I like how your species probably all have the bitey teeth, right?
Oh, I assume so.
So that means Richard's clams are all bitey clams. Mm-hmm. That's even more terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm a princess. It's fine. I am the clam queen. It's fine. It's good. But part of what...
I am the bivalve queen. Oh. Okay.
Thank you for that. Amazing.
You're welcome. Yeah.
So part of what the empath can do is kind of channel the emotions of the other characters and kind of like soak them up and kind of soak up their corruption too, right?
Oh, yeah.
I haven't gotten to play this one yet, but and then the 2 moves that I pick, let's see here. Lead by example. So when you endanger yourself by taking the lead, you can clear a condition or help out teammates or learn something about yourself. And then synchronicity. When you act as a team, you link your allies in a psychic landscape, allowing them to act as one synchronous being. I'm pretty excited about that. So I'm trying to remember like what all, we'll get to it when we get to our community stuff about all of our connections and our story and everything, I'm sure. Ryan, do you want to tell us about your character?
Absolutely. My character was named That Which Exists Among All, but Also Nowhere, or Tweeban for short. Tweeban exists along the entire like physical surface of this entire planet. And they are basically there to help amplify the echo harmoniously for the inhabitants of the world. But the entire world was apparently comprised of completely in the echo until I created Blurbs to create this environment for these physical things that were starting to form. I kind of imagine that.
Water.
Yeah, I kind of imagine creating this bubble of water with this barrier, and then these like things that were like proto-life eventually grew into the complex life forms that are there now. So that's kind of cool. And I took some moves. I'm the specialist, so I took some moves to help the team out. Safety net, so when things go bad, if an ally rolls a 6- on a basic move, I can mark a condition myself and make that roll a 10+. And not on my watch, which means I'm an expert at defending the innocent and using my surroundings to my advantage. So I can create advantages for my allies, which is really cool. Yeah, that's me.
I'm excited.
Uh-huh.
This is the good part.
This is the good part. So...
Not that the rest of it wasn't also good, but it's a good part.
So, how about we create a place? Let's create our community.
All right.
Let's make a place. I'll have to send you that soundbite, Amelia.
Oh, okay. I have it.
Oh, you do? Never mind.
All right. So basically the way that the city building works is a series of questions. We are going to all kind of pitch in for each of these, and we'll see what comes up. The first question is, what is a unique natural feature, neighborhood, or district in the city?
Let's go with like the most mundane thing. No, just kidding.
I mean,
Yeah, no,
honestly,
let's.
yeah, because
think?
like, well, it's so like the setting itself that we've sort of surrounded it with is so outlandish that I think it could really help ground it. And don't worry, it'll turn into something weird and wonderful, I'm sure.
I think it's like a grocery store.
Okay, so what does a
I'm trying to think of like
place-
the most mundane thing in a place where you live. Like, I mean, I don't.
Okay.
They don't have a
So-
store. Maybe I don't know if it's like capitalism. damn
Okay,
it.
so
But I'm trying to think of mundane things.
Fish
So what about
capitalism.
the like equivalent of a 7-Eleven in a reef? What does that look like? Like what's the thing that has a little bit of everything that you need? Maybe it's not maybe the best, but it's close.
It's like a travel plaza.
Okay.
So it's, some sort of like hub between, I think it's probably like toward the edge of town, but it's kind of a hub between other places that you would want to go outside of our little community.
Okay.
And so it's this little stopping point to rest. It's our little rest stop.
So we've got an entire kingdom, effectively, here. If you're the queen, Amelia,
But I don't know how fish monarchies work.
Well, that's where we make it up, right?
Well, I know. I'm just saying that doesn't mean that it has to be like a whole huge thing. I can be a queen of 6 people.
That's true.
Okay. So we have this sort of meeting place. It sounds like there's probably like a little bit of food there. So some sort of plants that grow. It's where, adolescent fish might hang out after they've been, downloading the latest educational lessons psionically from the clam computers.
It's a talk run by dolphins, and it's just called a podcast.
Oh my God, yes.
Please.
100%. So that is 100% a thing. So what makes this particular place special? Why is it the thing that people know about?
I think it is the only one for a significant distance.
Okay.
So we get a lot of other creatures coming through there because it is the only kind of option. But it's also sort of by default then the hub of culture in the area because it's kind of the only place where things are coming in and out.
Okay, so
because I think we're kind of isolated otherwise if everything else is far away.
Interesting. Okay, so what is the thing that is isolating the city from everything else? That this is sort of like the entrance or exit point to the city. We talked a little bit about Bub being named for Bubbles, right? So is Bub, Taylor, you said sort of surrounding the city?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
So tell us a little bit more about that. So if Bub is sort of surrounding this city, and they are these bubbles, like tell us a little bit more about that. Keeping in mind that we have the rest stop as sort of this entrance and exit to the city.
Yeah. So Bub is the membrane between our world and the Echo. He's not like an impermeable membrane between like different states. So like I feel like people probably pass through him and like around him pretty well. So like
Is that
and I think you could probably see the membrane, and folks who are like more tuned to the Echo itself can probably perceive that clearer. But yeah, I don't think that there's any like he's not impeding access to this place.
Interesting. Okay, so
is there then a bubble around each major city, or
Yeah,
or
let's say
is
that.
there one big bubble over all the cities?
I like multiple individual bubbles for 2 reasons. One is just like pure aesthetics, but then the other is it lets me shout, "I'm a Bubs!"
Awesome. I'm kind of picturing then traveling between each cities because the Echo sounds like it's like the pure Echo sounds like it might be dangerous for pure physical beings, right?
ooh, interesting, right?
So-
because it's like encroaching, and
Yeah.
like, these are
So I'm picturing when beings travel through to different cities, I create micro bubbles around them as they travel along the floor to keep them safe.
so it's like we're living underwater on the surface of Mars or something, where it's like it's not that the water itself is dangerous, it's that without the protection from the pure Echo.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's see? Started with underwater 7-Eleven, and here we go.
Yep.
All right. So we have bubble tunnels.
I'm imagining these bubble tunnels being like, highways, like interstate highways that are, there's nothing for hundreds of miles or whatever. You just have to travel from place to place.
Interesting. So do we think that is it that these are like the sapient creatures have sort of put together this system and found these points where Bub is strongest to build the cities?
I want to say that Bubs was created around the strongest points.
Okay.
And the cities
like
naturally grew up in those spots.
It's interesting, though, because I think that part of what we're talking about is that the echo is kind of like starting to like encroach on things.
Yeah.
And so you wouldn't necessarily need the bubbles until like recently. Have they always been like that just because? Or is this sort of a new phenomenon that we've even had to use those?
I think the bubbles hold back the echo. The echo's natural state is completely along the surface of the world, whereas these bubbles were created to have pockets of just pure water that keep everything living inside of it living.
So is the echo always unsafe and now it's just unsafer?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
Interesting. Gotcha. Okay. And so like the creatures that are living in the physical world, like they sort of grew here, and like for a while everything was all right, like, oh cool, we have this like pocket that is a physical world, and now it's starting to revert back, and this is like a long ongoing struggle that has been going on, and that's where Bub came from.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm thinking like back when it all started, it was probably like bits and pieces of organic matter here and there across the world. Mm-hmm. And it was something that I've been existing since then. And I said, I need to protect this new thing. So then I started creating the bubbles. And as the things grew, I made the bubbles bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually it got to a point where I couldn't make any more bubbles because there's just too many or too big.
Mm-hmm.
Also because the bubbles are like their own beings now too. So you can't just like control other beings.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay. So, yeah, underwater 7-Eleven, and we come up with this. Okay. So from there, let's talk a little bit about a sapient species that lives in this world other than the ones that make up this world. So I think, honestly, like Ryan and Taylor, your characters are obviously like pretty much unique. And mine, I think, are sort of weirdly in the echo. And anchored here. So I think really the only restriction we have is not a clam.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not a clam. Not a bitey clam.
Yes,
Nope.
Not a bitey clam. So I mean, we do know that there are dolphins with a podcast, right? So
Okay. Yep.
Right. Yep.
Let's talk about them. Yeah.
all right. So yeah, let's talk about them a little bit. What's a cultural tradition that they have, and I'd say let's talk about something from before the bubble cities formed, when they had sort of free reign of the oceans, and then once we have that, we can talk about how that has changed now.
I think that they have a strong tradition of oral histories. I think that's part of why they make these podcasts.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Okay.
They are sort of the storytellers of this world.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what does it look like as they tell these stories? Like, what form does that take, or has it taken in the past?
Does it? I want to say it works in harmony with Bub's projections and my sound manipulation.
Okay.
Maybe at like these amphitheater type places where they'll be able to speak the stories, and then it's kind of like this whole performance art thing where projections are created based upon the stories to tell a visual interpretation as well.
Oh, interesting. I feel like I was thinking something close but slightly different. I feel like somehow the way that they convey this sound also stimulates a sort of imagery in your brain. So even if you aren't watching this performance or something, hearing it is enough to like trigger the imagery.
Well, I think
too.
we can tie the echo into it. Like if they're using echolocation for it, it could potentially like create an image that is quote unquote real in the same way that I can create an image that's quote unquote real.
So is it like augmented reality for them then, where it's like they see it, but it's not actually there if you're not experiencing this?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about, have you ever heard of, there's like oh gosh, I'm trying to think about how to explain it, but there are things that they can do for people who are blind that like actually like stimulate their taste buds, that also like stimulates certain parts of the brain to like trigger imagery as well. It's crazy. And I feel like it's something kind of like that like
Interesting.
you can
So it's
stimulate like a certain part of the brain that like
Okay.
also triggers these other things.
So it's
Okay,
all
so
it's all internal.
So it's something that like they are able to project sounds that like coupled with like a connection with the echo maybe like can tap into the senses of whatever hears them and like allow them to experience the stories.
Right. But I think it's like important to me that however it's done, the imagery is triggered in like a very personal way so that you and I are not necessarily seeing the same thing.
Okay, yeah.
Interesting. I like that.
Okay. So Ryan, I know you'd mentioned amphitheaters. And I like the concept of that, but what I was thinking is like in our oceans there's the SOFAR channel, which is basically like this temperature band essentially where like the sound bounces off of the like change in density or whatever between like different layers of the ocean that are different temperatures and densities or whatever, and it's like a little tunnel essentially where it just keeps bouncing back and forth. The sound keeps going, and it can go for hundreds, thousands of miles. It would be really interesting if like instead of like an amphitheater like you think of it as a human being, like it would be like a space somewhere in the water that is like if you go to an opera house or something, if you stand in the middle of the stage, and you say something, you can hear it everywhere. And it's almost like that with these amphitheaters, and it's like that.
Yep.
Different spots in the water.
What if that plus these like SOFAR channel type things are transmitting it through the echo, and it not only hits the civilization that we're in, but it gets to other civilizations like
what about like I know Shelley, right, is from a species of creatures that live partly in the echo and have sort of anchored themselves to this physical world, like maybe that's what called them here. Interesting.
Okay, but here's the thing. Here's the thing.
Right.
Because this is like encroaching on everything, is it now distorting the sounds and images?
Yeah.
And they are like starting to get creepy.
I think, yes,
I think
absolutely.
we just found our corruption.
Like super creepy imagery because of the like.
Yeah, let's throw down a corruption token on that.
Yeah, that is. So if we had a map here, we'd be drawing an amphitheater, I guess basically just like a circle or something somewhere in the water, and we would be dropping a corruption token on that 100%. Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think that also kind of answers sort of how it started to change as creatures' movement have been more restricted inside of the bubble cities and the bubble highways. All right.
I wonder if that's the reason why my hold on these bubbles is starting to falter, is because when people use these amphitheater type locations, I have to do special stuff to keep the sound more localized.
Interesting. Okay. To keep like too much of the pure echo from getting into it.
Yeah.
Ooh. All right. I think we've got a good start. So what's a non-sapient species that inhabits this world? It could be domesticated or otherwise. We know we have the clams, and we know we have these dolphin-like creatures. What else lives here?
I like tiny little krill.
Yeah, I was thinking about the same sort of thing, but I didn't have the word for it.
All right. So what do they do? What purpose do they serve within the community?
I don't think that they do. They're like, not that they're like mosquitoes and they're pests, but they're just like around.
Okay. And I think like we could explore like what the corruption ends up, like how it's affecting them and sort of how that like spreads out to other parts of the ecosystem, maybe. Yeah. All right. So I think we've talked about this actually a little bit. An aspect of infrastructure for the city, such as transportation, trade or emergency services. So we've definitely got the bubble highways. So where, like, how do we think that, like, not everything can live inside of the bubble cities, right? Not everything can live inside of the tubes of bubbles that allow transportation between the two places. So building on that, like, what do we think it's like outside of those spaces?
I think outside the bubbles themselves, I want to say desert and death. Like
interesting
things that go out of the bubble protection don't last too long. It's kind of like those underwater like salt lake zones, where it's just, you're not going to last long if you get trapped in there, because there's nothing good there for you. You can't breathe anything there. It's still a liquid that you can swim through.
Okay.
But
I think that there are no currents there.
Yeah,
though. The
no
water's
currents.
just totally still.
Yep.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
It's frightening. I want to say it's dark too.
Okay.
But loud.
Ooh.
Like you get out there and it's like this otherworldly, even more otherworldly sound.
Really? Because I feel like if the water's still, that it's like creepy quiet.
That's what makes it more creepy though.
Oh.
But I feel like, you know, like there's like that moment where when like a fan turns off or something that you're like, okay, it's almost like eerily quiet now. Like something's missing.
What if it's that, but if you concentrate real hard, you'll get some like weird, like, am I really hearing something? Like some sort of weird sound?
It's like the worst ringing in your ears that you've ever felt, because it's not in your ears, it's in your head.
Yeah. But you don't know it until you start concentrating to try to hear it.
Okay.
But why would you? Because you wouldn't go out there.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
This is fine. This is all fine.
This is not like horrifying at all. This is why it's important that these bubbles are here.
Oh man. Okay, yeah. We are definitely getting into this and in a place that's not having a good time. All right. So what's a useful piece of biotechnology that we find here in these cities to like help everyone survive? Because like it's clearly a much smaller, like everything has to be contained within these small ecosystems essentially, that are protected from the stillness.
Trying to think what you would need. Like, what is a thing?
I'm wondering instead of something you need, like a hobby that some people have taken up, like trying to explore the outsides of the bubble, since the bubbles are not impenetrable.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe a piece of tech that lets you go out there for a bit.
That's not a hobby. That's a death wish.
But it's like going out to, or like haunted houses, going to haunted houses and trying to investigate ghosts.
You could say the same thing about bungee jumping.
Like a thrill seeking.
Yes, that's what it is. It's haunted bungee jumping. They go up to the top
like haunted
of the
bungee
bubble,
jumping.
and then they jump off.
Yep.
So
With little kelp bubbles.
with it being like creatures that can swim, like what if it's like it is a tether, right? There is some sort of physical tether that
It's more like a spacewalk.
yeah, where it's like you swim out as far as you can, and what if like it pulls at you?
Yeah.
Ugh. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so you have a tether, and like you have. I'm also imagining like there's that thing with what's it called, blue holes, where it's like a super deep narrow hole in the ocean that like the it's only got just a tiny shallow area of water above it, and then it's just a hole that bores down into the floor of the ocean, and so like there's not very much movement, and so like there's no oxygen that gets in and out of the water, and so like it's basically like that, where it's like it's very still. It can be, it can be very dark in this case. That's what we're saying, but like there's just like hardly any life there, and in this case it pulls at you. Jeez. I almost want, like, does nothing live out here, or is there something that lives out here and like nobody can figure out why?
I want to say at the very least there's echo creatures that are living out here.
I think we don't know.
We don't.
I think that there are all sorts of superstitions and rumors, but nobody knows for sure.
Interesting. And like the people who have what do we want to call it, like jumped, I guess jump is a good enough word as any, but like the people who have jumped the furthest and come back, like they come back with stories of things that clearly can't be true, but
like physically being touched when they get out there, like brushed against.
Yeah.
But you
like,
can't see anything, so you have no idea.
Do you think like religions have cropped up around what might or might not be out there?
I would say almost certainly.
Yeah.
There's got to be some cool like stillness cult.
Yeah.
Well, there's definitely a cult.
The cult of the stillness.
Well, and the really interesting thing about it too is that like because Bub and Tweebon are like in the world, it's like there are people who know what's going on, sort of, like to a certain extent. But it's also like, does that matter for, a large portion of the population who are just like, have this cultural memory of these open oceans that have now shrunk to just this space, that they can barely venture into.
And I think that like this corruption probably obscures anything that's out there too.
Interesting. Okay. So who knows? Maybe the corruption has already started, and this is just like, the characters that we have like just can't perceive what's actually going on. Maybe there is, a safe world out there, but the corruption is like tainted everyone's perceptions of it. That's really interesting. Okay.
Ooh.
I like the idea that the spirit that lives inside of Amelia's character knows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
This is all,
or at least the future of that spirit knows.
No big deal. Everything's fine.
That's
why I love this game.
I think we established last time if the bubbles do collapse, that's the end of civilization.
Yeah, like as we know it. Like that's.
I'll be the only one still existing.
Yeah, that would not be good. So, let's talk one more thing. What's a prominent cultural, religious, or natural event that is important to the city and its inhabitants? So, we've got the storytelling dolphins. We have the jumping that happens. But what's something else?
Now, outside these bubbles is pretty much pitch darkness, right?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that there's probably some bioluminescent things inside the bubbles.
Yeah.
Of course, obviously.
What if periodically and like predictably there is light storms that happen outside the bubble? Yeah.
Interesting. So it's like an aurora borealis or
like
something.
flashes of
Yeah,
light, and it's
something
beautiful.
like
from the
that.
echo. Oh, geez, that's terrifying. Because, like, where is that coming from?
Yeah,
Nothing lives out there.
Exactly.
And that's where light comes from. Light comes from living things, and
Yep.
nothing can live out there.
Yeah.
What
Let's
color?
not think too hard about it.
What? Okay, I have to ask the question now. So, what color? What colors are they?
Oh,
Ooh,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
It's like a silvery purple.
All right. We're just making. Oh, goodness.
This place
Making
is
happy times.
This place
Yeah.
is haunting.
It's super messed up. I love it. And then finally, what's something small but special that most of the inhabitants take for granted, having grown up here? Because I think it's like it's been a process that's been happening for a while, and so like the current generation, like this is what they've grown up knowing.
There is like a glowing moss that kind of grows over things. And it doesn't give off a ton of light, but if it were absent, like you would notice a significant difference because there's so much of it, but it kind of just
Okay.
grows all over everything, so you don't really think about it.
Okay. Oh yeah.
What's it taste
Okay.
like?
I think it's real tasty.
Is it well, but like, is it sweet? Is it like, I just want to know.
Like glowing moss, duh.
I don't know. I think it's a
Okay.
little more of an
You
umami
know-
flavor. It's got
you
like
know
kind of
what
a
it is?
smoky flavor.
It's like a.
What does it
it's
taste
like
like,
it's like a bonito Slurpee.
Nice.
That sounds
Yeah,
so
fish
gross.
flakes Slurpee.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's delicious.
But it melts in your mouth kind of like cotton candy.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Too bad.
Like
I
a
don't want
little, like
anything
little pop
fish
rock
flavored
sort
to
of
melt in my mouth.
feel to it.
Ew.
All right. Yeah, that's certainly a thing. Now, given that we're not going to play these characters, I still want, like, what do we imagine the inciting event? What's the cold open for the game that we would play with these characters?
I was going to say there's a leak somewhere.
Oh,
I want to. What if it
One of
was
my bubbles pops.
one of the civilizations nearby popped?
Oh, and
And
we have
the
a bunch
last-
of fish refugees.
And the last thing we heard from the so far echo channel was that this has happened and there's only so many people that were able to escape.
interesting. And
But we're not sure whether to believe it or not because we've been getting all of these sort of like corrupted
Yeah.
stories about things anyway that are getting progressively creepier. So we have no clue if this is really true or not.
Although I'm there.
yeah, both you and Bub are there.
Well, you can't answer all of our questions. There have to be some unknowns,
That's
Ryan.
true. I'm imagining that I don't have full perception of what's, totally above me. Just what's near the surface. And I can probably tell that something has happened.
It'd probably even be cooler if like you normally know everything, but for like the one time you just don't.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, hey, listen, I don't have an answer for you.
It's like, what if it not only popped the bubble, but it severed my connection to myself in that
I like that.
location. So now there's just a dark hole. It's like the only place on the surface of the planet that I can't feel.
Yeah. Yeah. And like that like if we had an opening, you know, like I said, if it was a cold open, we would have just this image of like the bubble collapsing and like your consciousness in the, you know, where we're all together, like just going dark and apart, and like everybody being like, what? And then you see like all the inhabitants like rushing through the bubble tunnels as they're collapsing until they get to, you know, the next closest city.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Happy times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm guessing a few casualties came from that too.
Oh yeah.
Ugh.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
This is the thanks I hate it, but I also love it. So
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I feel that way about this game all the time. It's like, oh, why did we do that to ourselves? Because there was, I mean, you asked some questions. There was nothing here. We did all of this to ourselves.
Raise the stakes.
Yep. But I like that this game sort of makes you do that. It makes you play in that space of like making things bad for yourself sometimes.
yeah. And like just the wins are going to be that much cooler with this. Like when you figure out what's going on and when we're able to push back against it, it's going to feel great.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Should we move into our discussion
I
section?
think we should.
Yeah.
All right.
D20 for your thoughts.
All right. So in this segment, we want to talk to our guests about their thoughts on the character creation process and how it feels in this system compared to others. But first, we'd like to ask you how you got into role-playing games in the first place.
Richard, I was
Taylor,
going to say,
do you wanna
Richard,
go first, or-
my answer is long.
Okay. I will give my answer then. So in elementary school, I got bused to a different part of the city because they had a cool math and science program, and now I'm writing math puzzles for kids, so I guess it worked. But on that bus, there were these three brothers who played narrative story games. They didn't call it that, but that's what it was. And they invited me to play with them. And like one of my very earliest memories of gaming was playing a Star Trek game. And we decided to go to Warp. And we had forgotten that the inertial dampeners were not working, and so we pancaked ourselves against the back of the bridge.
Whoops.
Yeah, it was great. But you know, my older brother played D&D and all those things and Shadowrun, and he was 9 years older. So when he was just getting into that in high school, I was right at that impressionable age of going, my brother's super cool and he's doing this super cool thing.
Nice.
Yeah, and now I get to game with him and his high school friends. So it's pretty cool, like making that transition to being like, oh yes, I am sort of one of the crew now. You know, 25 years later.
All right, Taylor, I'm ready for your really long story.
It goes back to when I was born. No, but pretty close there. I learned how to talk and read really early. Like I was talking in full sentences before I could walk. And one of my earliest memories is when I was like 2 years old. I finished my first book, which was Hop on Pop. And like, I remember running into like our sunroom with the little tiny hardcover book. My dad was taking a nap and I just wailed it on his head and I yelled, I read it. And I really got hooked into choose your own adventure books, in like preschool and kindergarten. And none of my friends could read. So what I would do is gather a group of like 4 or 5 friends at recess, and I would read through these books. And we went through all of them that my library had. And so I just started making them up. And so I would make up like choose your own adventure stories, and like we would like tell stories of like boy detectives, and we were all really into Watership Down because I also brought that and read it, which is a great thing for a bunch of preschoolers to like.
Yikes.
Yeah, so like that was just this thing that I had like started doing, and it wasn't anything like weird or special because like I was like, hey, this is a way for me to like make recess fun and entertain my friends, and this was like the one skill that I had that people thought I was cool for some reason. And so flash forward a few years, and I was at a summer orchestra camp with some friends, and we were looking for things to do because we had some like open time. And I said, well, I can run us through like a choose your own adventure book story. And everyone looked at me kind of weird, and we started doing it, and I was like into some like fantasy video games. So I did like a wizards and sorcery kind of deal. And one of my friends goes, this is like Dungeons and Dragons. This is super fun. I had no clue what that was. And so he brought the books the next day, and we rolled up characters, and I immediately grew frustrated being a player and not being the storyteller. So I quote unquote borrowed his Dungeon Master's Guide and read it, and I was the storyteller from then on.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That is really cool.
I want to talk to both of you about your process for picking and creating characters in a game. How do you go about deciding what kind of character you want to make? I mean, and Taylor, it sounds like you don't make a lot of characters because you like to be in charge, but I assume you make a lot of NPCs then, at least.
I mean, I know my answer for this. I have a silly answer and a serious answer. And my silly and flippant answer is that whatever silly pun I happen to have in my brain at the moment is my character inspiration. Which like is actually a surprising number of times like it leads to really interesting places, because you can start with a kernel of pretty much anything, and given good world building questions and character building questions, it always turns into something interesting. The I guess more serious answer would be now, as opposed to growing up when it was just like, oh cool, what cool powers have I not played with in this system. I think now it's a lot more interesting for me to think about like what stuff am I dealing with, like I've created a couple of characters over the last couple of years who are parents, because that's not necessarily something that I think is in my future, but it is something that I think is interesting to explore from like an emotional place, and like dealing with like I was talking about in the first episode of this series, like how do I process the things that like I wish were different about myself or my life, or that like who could I be if I could be a different person, and like finding those places where it's like, what emotions can I explore that I don't get to explore in like my daily life,
I think that's a really, I've talked about, people are going to be so tired of hearing me say this, but I think that that's a thing that I really love about role-playing games, is that it gives you that sort of safe space to explore those things. Because I think that we don't talk about the grief of not having things. Like, we don't get a chance to mourn the loss of things that never were.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times in role-playing games, that can be a thing that we do. We can take the time to say, this is a thing that never was, and I'm sad about it. I'm sad about this thing that I did not get to experience. Let me take some time, and in this, sort of gamified way, get a moment to experience those things that I didn't get to or never will get to or whatever.
Yeah.
And I really like that it offers that kind of space to do those things in a way that is comfortable and confined, and really that there aren't a lot of other opportunities to do.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the other thing that I find really interesting for myself is, like, you know, I have a theater degree, right? Like, I've done the acting thing, and what I found for myself was that, like, that's something that is too much of an emotional investment, I think, to pursue it as, like, a career, or even to, you know, like, when I'm 60, I will probably volunteer for a local community theater or something, you know, when I'm retired. But, like, there's so much energy and emotion and time and effort that you have to put into, like, portraying a character who is, like, real, you know, and then you do the thing and then you walk away and it's like, okay, cool, I did this thing and a bunch of strangers had 2 hours of, you know, a cool experience, but then what's left, you know? Where I feel like with gaming, like, you get this you get that same, like, thing where you can put yourself into this, you know, situation, you can play this character, but because you're playing it with a smaller group of people who all, like, shared in that creation of that experience, like, you have a connection with those people now. And, like, you know, growing up, I played a bunch of, you know, D&D and, you know, like, basically, like, you know, video games that just happen to be on a table with some other people and, you know, let's go blow up this tank or whatever, you know, whatever. Like, and it wasn't, like, a transformative experience in the same way that I've found, like, indie games have been, like, changing the way I look at things. You know, where it's like, now I can walk away from something where I go, okay, I didn't have to, you know, spend 3 weeks learning lines and doing this production and blah, 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 and then walk away with, you know, basically nothing. With this, it's like, oh, okay, like, I had an experience with these 4 people that I didn't know, you know, in the middle of the country where I don't live, and, you know, 6 months later, we're still talking about it, and we're friends, and we, you know, talk online every day now, and, like, we can remember those things together, and, like, I don't know, I feel like it hits a lot of those, like, moments for me where it's like, I need that to have those emotional experiences, and it's a cool way to, like, build friendships, and it's a lot less, like, work than doing, like, theater, you know?
So do you think that is because you are getting that back and forth, whereas, like, if you're on a stage, you are putting everything out and you are not getting a whole lot back? I mean, and in a game you have that back and forth? Or do you think it's more related to the fact that you have some agency over the things that you're putting your energy into, rather than reading someone else's lines, you are making your own decisions?
Or
neither.
I don't know. I think, like, because you're creating it at the table with other people, it's like you're immediately invested, because, like, hey, I created this. Yeah, so it is a lot of that, like, hey, I get to create this thing, and also, like, the, you know, the game structure lets you sort of opt into the experience that you want in a 2-hour chunk, you know? Like, if I go and I say, okay, I'm going to go try out, you know, I don't know, No Thank You Evil, right? Like, I'm going into that and going, okay, this is going to be, like, a fun, simple game that, you know, I could probably play with, like, you know, some young kids, and it'll be cool, and it'll be fun and light and happy. Or, you know, I can go, okay, I can go play some Cthulhu, whatever, right? And it's like, okay, but that's, like, I can go into that experience, I can put in, you know, X amount of effort and get what I want out of it. And if I don't like it, it's like, okay, it's not a big loss. And if I do like it and it was really cool, well, I had this cool experience with people. And also, like, the rules sort of structure that interaction as well, you know? And, you know, for myself, like, yeah, okay, I've done acting and things like that. I am bad at improving things. And, like, given the choice to describe what my character is doing or like drop into something in character, I will almost always default to describing what's going on. Because I'm still that very much that shy kid who, you know, like didn't talk to people until like junior year of high school. So even though I did a bunch of acting and things, like that was a stretch for me. And a lot of times I will still default to, you know,
and I want to butt in here and say that like third person narration I think is a perfectly valid form of like role playing. Like not everyone, I think expecting everyone to like have an improv degree and just be like, I am only speaking in character for the entirety of this 4-hour session is ridiculous. Are there people who do that and have fun?
Yeah.
Sure. Is it great audio to listen to? Absolutely. But is it something that I'm expecting of everyone who's sitting at my table? Hell no. Do I like doing it? Hell no. Right. Like I am much more of a third person narration. Like we are telling a story together. We're not acting it out together, but it's still going to be badass.
Yeah.
I was actually, as I'm flipping through my notebook, I took some notes while I was at a panel at GenCon last year that Drew Marziewski did, talking about acting for role playing, and he had a point in there too that is, you know, like you can do a couple different levels. You can just say, this thing happens, you know, or you can describe what happens, or you can be in character. And all of those things are valid levels, and all of those things are kind of appropriate at different times and, you know, can add different levels of comfort. But especially when we listen to a lot of like actual play podcasts, there's this feeling that I have to be like constantly in character and constantly on and charismatic. And for me, I'm not as good at that part of it. I do better with those sort of descriptive narrative kind of things, and I feel much more comfortable in that zone. I'm trying to branch out a little bit, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If that is where you are comfortable, games are supposed to be fun. Do what is fun.
Well, and you know, the funny thing for myself I've found is that like if it's a normal interaction or something relatively mundane, like I hesitate away from it. But if it's like this is a crucial moment where I need to tell you like all the pain that my character is suffering, I will 100% do that in character, you know, because it's like I want to feel that. Yeah. But yeah.
So I guess to answer from my perspective, when I create characters, so my answer is going to be a lot quicker and a lot shorter and a lot more self-indulgent. It's because when I create characters, I think about who I would most likely have a crush on in whatever game we're playing, and then I make them. For example, we just aired the most recent episode of Protein City Comics, which, hey, I guessed it on. And my character on that is like this like weird lithe cat boy from space, and he is like the competing heir to this bodyguard like family, I guess, and he's got a lot of drama with his boyfriends, and it's like, yeah, I would fall in love with this horrible fictional character and dream about him and make Pinterest boards and like title playlists and weird like image edits. That's the kind of characters that I like to make. It's completely self-indulgent and gay, and I love it.
Oh, it's great.
Do it. That's beautiful.
Oh, one thing I forgot to mention for mine is the other character strategy I have is, hey, what's my biggest insecurity? Let's go with that.
There you go.
That's a fun one.
Awesome. Well, then let's talk a little bit more about Descent into Midnight compared to other games. How do we think the character creation in this game stacks up to other systems that we've played or created characters
I think
for?
It's the second best character creation system that has ever been devised. The first best is, of course, this is a game about fishing by one Taylor LaBresh.
Wait, who now?
Arguably.
Never heard of him.
First or second best. I don't know. It's a toss-up.
Now, wait. Where can we find this person's games?
DescentIntoMidnight.com is the best place to go for a game that he worked on with two other designers, Richard Kreutz-Landry and Rich Howard. I don't know if you've heard of them. I am completely unbiased and objective when I say that this is one of the best character creation systems in the entire world.
So can I ask, in your humble opinion, why? I mean,
Yes.
it is PBTA, and so it does have a lot of things in common. And we talked in a previous episode about how you feel like it owes a lot of things to the way Masks does things, and we talked about Pasión de las Pasiones. So, I mean, do you think that there are things that Descent into Midnight brings to the character creation process that we don't find in other PBTA games, or do you feel like it fits that mold pretty well and that's just like a system that really works?
I've got some thoughts on this, if you don't mind, Taylor. Okay. So one of the pieces of feedback that we've had pretty consistently from the beginning is that this is a game where, we have this, the tagline of, we're exploring the depths of the sentient mind, right? So we're getting in those aquatic puns and everything, even right there in the tagline. But at first I thought, man, that sounds pretentious as hell, right? And like, but what I've come to realize is that people have very much like responded to that, in that, you get to play a character that is distinctly alien, right? And Taylor likes to bring up that, okay, let's try and avoid that anthropomorphism where we can, so that's not a reference point, right? And I think what it does is it lets you explore what's important about like humanity and emotions and connections with people without having a bunch of trappings of like, cultural baggage or like these other things, or like, like, oh, well, you look like this or anything like that. It's just like, okay, if I'm a fish and you are, like the life force of the ocean, and, you're a weird thing that exists in the dimension next door and pops in to say hello every 1,000 years, like, what do you do with that? It's like, well, the only thing left to you is like to explore, like, okay, well, what are the connections between these sapient beings look like, and like what matters to them, and so many, I think, like, we owe a lot, like we said, to like Masks and other Powered by the Apocalypse games, where there's a lot of freedom to define yourself, and the questions or the options sort of give you some direction as far as like, hey, here's some roads you can go, and sort of imply a lot. But I think what we're doing that has really resonated with people is giving people, a super blank canvas, that encourages them, like, hey, don't just do, a mermaid or a person who swims or a sea elf or something. Like, do something that is weird and interesting to you, and then really put yourself in the shoes of something that is very different from yourself, and figure out what makes sense. What's the things that you have in common, or what are the experiences that you can like share with that. Again, like it's I don't think the mechanisms are different than any other Powered by the Apocalypse game for the most part. It's, hey, here's a list of options, and, instead of powers and masks, we have gifts, which can be, whatever. But like the overall thing that you're building is something that is alien, but the goal is to create, a being that will then connect with other people in like interesting ways and emotional ways. And that's the thing, that's like the key piece,
Yeah. I was thinking about this after we recorded the character creation session for this, because Descent into Midnight character creation was a huge inspiration for my game. And my game and Descent into Midnight, they both have evolved their character creation a bit to be something quite remarkable. And I was like, I can get some really cool stuff with my game, but I can't get what we get out of Descent into Midnight, because you have more of a blank slate that allows you to literally open up your imagination to literally anything. Right?
Pretty much, yeah.
And it's a game about aliens and exploring an alien mind from the perspective of a human, which is just so remarkable when you dive headfirst into it, no pun intended, and just really embrace the concept of creating an alien creature in an alien world.
Yeah, I think you get to drop a lot of those preconceived notions
Yeah.
and stereotypes, and like it allows you to have a lot of freedom, and like there are no tropes, you know. I mean, and you obviously you can bring some of those like storytelling tropes into things, but like there are no stereotypes there. It's just it's open, and you know the only preconceived notion that you can come in with is, hey, everything here is wet. And beyond that, it leaves a lot of room.
And I think one of the cool things about it too is like, you know, like I was saying, it's like, hey, if you're going to be a fish and I'm going to be an octopus and this person's going to be, you know, a life force or echolocation or whatever, like there is no excuse for bringing in like negative things that you like don't want to. It's like, you know, it's not like, you know, D&D, right? Well, it's like, well, going around and killing the savages is just what we do because it's D&D, right? Like, which, whoa. You know, with this, it's like, hey, there is a problem, and it can be emotional, or it can be, you know, an existential threat or whatever. And it's like, it lets you bring in whatever you want and like address the things like on your terms as a group to say, hey, these are the types of conflicts that we want to face. And like literally you build the corruption out together to say, hey, what is the problem that we're going to face, you know, and like that knowledge of, hey, we're going to do this together as a community. Like, I think, I hope that it's, you know, allowing the players to like come together and do that in a healthy way to say, hey, we're going to face adversity, but we're going to define what it is. And we're going to, you know, choose, this is how we battle it together, I guess.
Did you ever explore creating a world first before the characters?
We did. So it wasn't actually until pretty recently that we started character first and then drawing out the community. That actually came, I think, you know, and I don't know that we ever codified that. So I'm sure that there exists games in the past where we did start with the characters and then the community and vice versa. But we didn't really say, hey, this is how it's supposed to be with a capital S and a trademark at the end, until after we like slammed down the mechanics for that community map. And I would always run games saying like, hey, we're making the character first and then the community, because it's not the story about the world, it's the story about our characters who live in a world. So it's important to make that. But, you know, this is more important than, you know, whatever might be out there.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because the order completely matters in this case, because we made these very distinct characters, and the world that we created was based around the characters themselves. Whereas if we built the world first, our characters, I guarantee, would have been 100% different.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can think about it like the cities came about because of who, you know, Bub is.
Yeah.
The whole, like, oh, there's this scary, you know, void ocean, dead ocean all around, like, and all that. I think one of the things that Rich was pretty insistent about when we were talking about like building the inhabitants for the city was like, hey, we should make sure that like the characters that you are playing are part of a species in the world, but they are not like the thing. So like, you know, again, going back to the D&D thing, it's like, oh, well, a dwarf is a fighter with a big beard who has lots of hit points and an axe, right? Mm-hmm. Like an elf is an archer or a wizard, you know, whatever, like all that kind of stuff. Like we don't want it to be like, hey, oh, you are playing a shark, so every shark in this world is whatever you are, you know? And like the idea of, okay, well, you are playing a character that is among the species, and you know, you're going to build out a bit about like who they are and what they are. Well, you have to know who your character is to then help build the world with them and like paint with that brush. And like in some of the games that he was running, like that's how he was starting it out, is, hey, okay, let's build these characters, and then let's you know, populate the world with, you know, are you unique, or are you a representative of this species, and like, you know, what are some traits that you have that are common to your species, and what do, you know, like what other things do they do, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I feel like that really helped, because like if you ask somebody, hey, what's a cool feature about this underwater city, right? You might get some like terrain. You know, you would start with some terrain or some feature, and then you would kind of build out from there. And I feel like we've talked about there's always one with, you know, there's always one person who plays the really bizarre sort of out there concept. I feel like we've gotten more really interesting characters by starting out with a blank slate and just asking about, like, you know, picking those descriptors and the gifts and everything, and then going, okay, based on that, let's go build the city together where you are an integral part of it. You know, because again, like we said here, like Bub would have been something completely different had we, you know, said, oh, okay, well, there's just a reef. Now what, you know?
So within that, talking about all of the different things that you can do within character creation and community creation, are there things that you feel like are flaws of this game still, or things that because obviously you're still doing some play testing too, like things that you are still working out, you know, like wrinkles that you haven't figured out, or things that you think that maybe you never quite will.
Yeah, I think, and I hesitate to call it a flaw, because I don't think that it's like a bad thing, but like this game will not serve everyone who tries to play it. And I think where it might...
Hot take, games shouldn't, because not everything's for everyone.
Like I've seen people have difficulty making characters in Descent into Midnight who struggle with making like on the snap decisions. And it's not a game where you are choosing like a big, huge list of options. Like at most, if you look at like our lists or our looks and gifts, like there's like 3 or 4. And those are intentionally vague because it supports the kind of play that I love, where you see that there's always one, like, I am the interconnectedness of all living things. And I got that because I'm enlightened and encrusted, like, whatever. It's not gonna support people who are looking for a system like Dungeons and Dragons, where it says you are one of these 3 specific things, and then you can, like, extrapolate your character from that. It asks you to do some of that work up front.
I do know that I'm the kind of person who tends to need a box to work within, that I get kind of stressed out when I'm just given a blank page. I will say that one of the things that helps me with that, and a thing that has sort of made this game okay for me, is being around the table doing it with other people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people who have listened to our character creation episodes can kind of hear me hem and haw about things and just say, like, I don't know what to do. I don't really know what I want. I have no clue where I'm going, whatever. And having other people around to kind of bounce ideas off of and say, okay, I can kind of see the world that we're creating, and I can kind of pull from this thing that you're doing or someone else is doing, helps me a lot. But I do think there are definitely people that have a hard time with some of those like broader open spaces. And as much as I love this game, I am one of those people. And every time I've sat down to play this game, I've had a moment of like, oh crap, I don't even know where to start. And And, that can be like a little bit stressful. I like this game enough to say, oh, well, I'll figure it out. And I've played it enough times now, too, to be like, okay, I know it'll be fine. But yeah, definitely that can be a little bit tough. And, I think you're right. I don't think it's necessarily a flaw. It's certainly by design that it does that. But that is a thing that, I agree. Like, even I sometimes have a hard time with.
And I will say that, like, growing up playing, more traditional games, being in the GM seat or the seat of the guide for this game, right? Like it's, especially if you're doing a one shot at a con and it's like, okay, we're building characters in the first hour, 45 minutes or whatever. We're going to take 5 minutes and I'm just gonna put together the start of a story with maybe an endpoint somewhere in mind and we'll see what happens is terrifying.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever had a bad game running it, several times. And like it's a little bit of a leap of faith, and I think that could be intimidating for someone who's relatively new to running games. And again, I don't think that's necessarily like a flaw of the game. It's just how it is for PBTA in general. I think.
Well, I think it's nice too because PBTA and this game especially relies heavily. Every time I've played it, on the other people at the table, not just the guide, to come up with not only what's going on around you, but situations that, and maybe even escalating the situation of sorts, and figuring out what to do from there. So it's a lot of back and forth collaborating from the start to finish. I like it. But yeah, it's terrifying. I haven't run Descent into Midnight yet, but I run Chimera pretty much the exact same way, and it is terrifying.
Are we ready for my favorite part of the show? It's the fanfiction section, where we get to talk about how we think this game would go. How do we think that our group works together? How would we do in this game? How do we think it would play out?
Oh gosh.
I want to lose so badly. Like,
yeah,
I want to experience like going through all the trials and tribulations and failing.
I feel like in this particular setting with this particular group, I 100% agree with you. Like, I would want to experience the struggles of like exploring the void a bit, and like, especially as like the redeemed, where a lot of them is like trying to hold back their anger and like the negative emotions, like I can just imagine like playing that arc of them like trying to hold it together as everything crumbles around them, and like getting those wins and coming together with everyone, and then ultimately just like watching everything crumble away as like one by one until there's nothing left but Tweeban, like yikes.
Yeah.
Well, and I think two of the hardships that I picked for my character, like the things that I just don't quite get, were anguish and despair.
Yeah.
And so I really want room to kind of explore those and have to come to terms with those things. And I like the idea of just this sort of like desperation and devastation, and the realization that like sometimes you can't fix things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I think it would be...
I mean, is rough. But
that's why I think it would be super interesting if you were like literally the queen of this city, at least, like the figurehead, the ruler that is supposed to keep people safe, and all of your resources, everything that you throw at it, it's still not enough, and coming to that realization,
Yeah,
I gotta like hope that there's some fix at the end, though. Like, and this might just be like some like player calibration, because like I like Descent into Midnight when it's like really emotional and very passionate, but not necessarily in a despairing sense. Like, I love it when games like get really intense and super emotional, but then like the message of the story is like through these disasters, comma, like a crucible. Like this is the forge that presses the diamond into shape.
I think, like, especially with this group, like, I can imagine that, like, we would lose, and then we would have, like I don't know. I can imagine, like, the physical world sort of collapsing in on itself until there was almost nothing left, and then there,
pearl.
yeah, exactly. But like, the pearl becomes a new physical reality as, like, Dweeban, like, learns from it and can, like, recreate, like, a whole new world. I think would be really cool.
Like the pearl is like a stabilizing entity for everything.
I like the idea that, like, it, you know, it does all come collapsing in on itself, but the realization and sort of acceptance that wasn't bad. And it's sort of like almost like a metaphor for death, I guess, in the way that it's like it is somewhat inevitable, but that doesn't mean it has to be bad or scary.
Yeah.
That there are ways to sort of control your part of it and to, you know, kind of come to terms with those things and be at peace with things that are going to happen anyway. And maybe that's just like where I'm at right now in my life, because I've just finished a ton of dialectical behavioral therapy, a lot of which focuses on you can't change everything and you are not in charge. And so, like, the idea of having to come to terms with things and just, like, they call it, like, sitting in with your discomfort and just, like, letting things be bad and being okay with that. And then also, like, accepting things and, like, the sort of peace that you feel when you get there.
It's like the metaphorical, like, Armageddon scenario of there's a giant asteroid headed for the Earth. We've thrown everything at it that we can. We cannot stop it. Humanity needs to accept that their time is done. What does that look like? Sort of deal.
And everybody has, like, a big, like, nice dinner party and, like, just, like, your last glass of wine and, And I feel like that is, and again, maybe that's just where I'm at right now, but, like, I feel like that's what I would want from this.
Interesting.
I can definitely picture that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's interesting, too, because it's like it can go either way, like, easily, you know? And
yeah, I mean, we certainly could put everything toward it and we could find a solution. And, you know, like, I think if that's the game that you really wanted to play, like, you could, and I think those are, like, always the kind of important discussions to have at the table and feel out, you know, what do people want? Because what we have, you know, what Ryan and I have described is a very specific kind of game that really probably isn't for everyone and, you know, could really be very uncomfortable and very, you know, leave you feeling just really kind of icky at the end. But if that's the experience that you want, then you can kind of walk away feeling, like, satisfied and at peace and, you know.
And normally I would be in the, like, I want a really hopeful game even against insurmountable odds.
Yeah, I'm surprised you sided with me on that one.
Right. I haven't experienced the, like, these sorts of, like, more dark type games before. And that's a space I'm opening myself up to right now, where I want to let those, like, really hard feelings in to my games. And I think it's because Dirge still broke me.
Yeah. I've noticed that, like, as we've gone on with the show, like, you have gotten more and more open to, like, these, to, like, you know, I don't want to say, like, my kind of games, but, like, I always want these, like, heavy emotional experiences. And you are always kind of coming to the table as more like, this is my fun time. This is, you know, my time to, like, hang out with friends. And I want to walk away feeling, like, energized and not drained. And I am here for the catharsis of having everything just ruined.
I want to be stabbed in the heart and thank the swordsman that does it. Effectively.
Yeah. And then if you're Taylor, you want to also kiss him. So,
I mean, sounds like a good time, right? Like,
right? Sounds like a great game.
But I think also, like, to Taylor's point, like, you know, I know we talked about it last time, but, like, with the sort of one shot structure, there's very much that like, okay, let's, hit the ground running and push hard and, make everything terrible.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, again, this could be a really interesting, like, hopeful resurgence of like pushing back the boundaries of the echo and learning to like understand it and figure out what it was that was, like pushing in on the physical world and making things so still and sort of like coming to peace with that. And, like, what is it that, like, where have Shelley's people gone? Right. And, figuring out things like, like if they did leave and they did release their hold on the physical world, like what does that look like? And I think there'd be some really interesting ways to explore that.
I think that I'd like to explore the idea that, like that we are the corrupting factor, that it's not this thing outside, but we are, we have sort of made our space within it and not, taken into account what the echo needs or whatever, that like we are the corrupting factor here. And we, like how do we need to change to fit in with the rest of this ecosystem?
I think it could easily culminate into a situation where there was too many civilization pockets and the like spreading of civilizations has like weakened the echo to the point where it started pushing back. And so gathering everybody into a singular space and creating just one singular bubble within that space might be enough.
So it's not as diluted.
Yeah, it might be enough where the echo will slipstream past this one bubble and not be turbulent because of all the multiple bubbles out there.
Oof.
Yeah, I can see that working.
So I think that this is a good place to talk about, like leveling up and advancement, Richard, because you brought up how games kind of go differently depending on whether you're playing this one shot or a longer game. So maybe now is a good time to go ahead and take it up a level.
Take it up a level. Take it up a level.
So I want to talk about how character advancement works in this game, because I've only played it as a one shot. I haven't gotten the chance to actually level up in the game. So how does that work?
Taylor, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so in this, there are two kind of ways of like quote unquote leveling up, and I'm still not like super comfortable calling it leveling up or advancement. It's just like things happen and then more story happens. But there's not.
It's like the characters grow, I think.
So there's a harmonious way and then there's a corrupt way to advance. And both avenues represent different paths of your story. And ideally, our design goal is that they will both be happening kind of at the same frequency. So as you engage with and resist and encounter and fight the corruption and learn more about the corruption, you will move along a corruption tracker. When that corruption tracker hits 5, you reset it and you get what's called a corruption move. You can only take 5 of these total before, bad things happen. At max 5, you can choose to preemptively have bad things happen. Taking a corruption token or taking a corruption move means that there is a corruption token that is put immediately onto your community, but it also gives you something that like another piece of mechanic. And that mechanic is a one-time use ability that does like really big melodramatic story with a capital S. And that story, that story makes it much easier for you to enact your will upon your environment, but it comes at a cost either to yourself, the community, your friends. It is a messy and entangled move. And you can use it once and then you mark it off, but then that tally is always and forever on you. You only get a limited amount of those. And then on the flip side, as you engage with your friends, as you heal the community, as you learn from your mistakes, you gain what's called harmony. And you have a harmony token or a harmony track as well. And when you fill your harmony track, you clear it. You put in a harmony token on the community immediately. And then you get to take an advancement. And these advancements are things like take another move from your playbook, take a move from another playbook, your standard PBTA advancement fare. And those are permanent. They are lasting, representations of your harmony. And that kind of split is intentional. We want the effects of harmony to be always and forever, but we want the effects of corruption to be really intense but impermanent.
That's really cool. I love that so much.
Yeah, I really like that balance. Anything else that you guys want to mention about this game before we wrap up?
It's really good. And I love that people are excited about how dark and emotional it is. I will say it makes me kind of uncomfortable that that's the only through line that's being sold about this game. We've literally had a game where our story was a Saturday morning cartoon, and we were a bunch of snails trying to help our friend who was getting bullied by his older slug brother. It is a game that has it has that through line of emotional intensity, but it also ideally has a through line of hope and connectedness and togetherness. So I encourage more.
Yeah, I will say our discussion is heavily colored by the fact that those are the kinds of games that I like to play and the people that I have played with. But I know when I was playing my second game at GenCon, Taylor, I think you were running one at the same time, and I could hear everybody in the next room over laughing hysterically, which was not what was happening in my game. But it can go both ways, and I think it really depends on who you have at the table and, we talked about the kind of game that you want to play. And so, I do think it's important that it can be dark and creepy, but it doesn't have to be.
I'd love to explore
that's just
a slice of life type of session in one
I don't
of
know
these
that we could do
worlds.
slice of life because I don't think that our mechanics are really set up for mundanity, and that I think I say mundanity in a really great way because that's what slice of life thrives on, and that's my big selling point for slice of life. But I don't think that Descent into Midnight does mundane stories very well.
the corruption can't just be
I mean, it can, but it's food poisoning to the point where that is your entire civilization's existential thing that they are dealing with.
Yeah, and I think like we were saying, the amount of con one shots that we've been running for it have very much I think those have been the experiences that people have been walking away with. And in the mechanics, there are the things there for the team moves, all of the sort of solving and sort of coming together. It's all there, and a lot of I think the connections and the positivity are coming from the interactions that you're having when you're sort of reflecting on what's been going on, and sort of the costs of having to do what you have to do to fight the corruption, and the discussions around when you're placing the harmony tokens, which you get as you advance that track. Those are the things that haven't come up as often in those games to be oh, okay, here's this corruption that we fought and we did a thing because we have to get through a story in 2 hours, but how does the community heal? What does it look like as whatever corruption it is has been pushed back in this area? How does it regrow? How do the relationships between people heal? All of those things are super important, but they're not necessarily the first thing that jumps out at you when you're reading through the moves and go, ooh, here's some juicy corruption. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of those would come out in longer play.
I'm really excited to get the chance to kind of explore some of the advancement options. And I think like, dealing with those things that happen afterwards and like, how do you rebuild a community after something like that? And, I want to hopefully get a chance to explore some of that kind of stuff too and see where the game goes with that. Because as much as I love to like burn it down, I am excited at the chance to like maybe build it back up afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how in one shot it can really hit you with that emotional gut punch, but you can kind of do that at the beginning of a campaign and then balance that out with all the hopeful stuff. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can start with that gut punch and be like, okay, now how do I recover from this?
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Taylor and Richard, thank you both so much for joining us to talk about Descent into Midnight. This was really amazing.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us on.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Can you go ahead and remind everyone where they can find you online and what sort of things you're working on?
Absolutely. So folks can find me on Twitter at Leviathan Files. They can find my games at riverhousegames.itch.io. And I just want to give a shout right now until the end of Metatopia. I'm running a half-off sale to get me to the conventions that I'm going to, essentially. I have a goal on there of like $1,500, which sounds like a lot, but if you realize that I have to like fly to these places and buy hotels, and it's not cheap to do any of that stuff, please tell your friends about all of the games. And then you can also find like a big one that I'm working on at descentintomidnight.com. That game is called Descent into Midnight, and it's very good.
Taylor, you also have a podcast.
I do. It's called Game Closet, and it's an informal chat show with queer and LGBT plus tabletop role players, game designers, archivists, podcasts, all of that.
And it's very good.
Thank you.
That's a very good show, and it gives me a lot of feelings.
Oh yeah, me too.
I really like it. Richard, what about you?
All right. So I am Richard Kreutz-Landry. You can find me on Twitter at rkreutz-landry, RKREUTZLANDRY. You can also find my origami and a little bit of tiny game design work at origamigaming.com. And then if you're looking for Rich Howard, the third member of our trio, you can find...
who will not get his t-shirt because he's not on the episode, but...
he is at Umbral Walker on Twitter, and he co-hosts Whelmed, the Young Justice Files with Emily Booza, and does a bunch of other stuff, but is kind of one of the aquatic gaming, I don't even know the word,
experts, notable people.
Yeah, notable folks. So definitely look him up.
Yeah, and we'll put a link to his stuff in our show notes too, because we love Rich. He's just, he's just wonderful. And I wish that he could have come on this episode too, but he's got a weird schedule. So fix that, Rich, if you're listening to this. Fix your schedule, man, so that you can come get your t-shirt. Thank you both of us for sitting down with us to do this. I'm so glad that we finally got to talk about this game. And thank you to everybody else for tuning in. Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts and guests, or even find some of our character sheets. Character Creation Cast can be found on Twitter at CreationCast. I'm one of your hosts, Amelia Antrim, and I can be found on Twitter at Ginger Reckoning. Our other host, Ryan Bolter, can be found on Twitter at Lord Neptune. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license, or with permission from the podcast it originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by Amelia Antrim. Further information for the game system used and today's guests can also be found in the show notes. If you like the game systems discussed and wish to purchase them, links to the products can be found in the show notes. Also check our notes or the website for cool stuff to go with each character, like dice or mixtapes. Thanks for joining us. And remember, we find that the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We'll see you next time. Now we gotta read some show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Character Creation Cast is hosted by the One Shot Podcast Network. If you enjoyed our show, visit oneshotpodcast.com, where you will find other great shows like All My Fantasy Children.
Each week, Aaron Catano-Saez and Jeff Stormer take a listener-submitted prompt and, using some of their favorite tabletop RPGs, create an original fantasy character. Along the way, they share laughs, stories, verbal hugs, and populate a shared universe, one story at a time.
I click. I've got waveform friends.
I've got all sorts of waveforms.
Nice.
Don't know much about
So there's this all books one. Is that all the books?
Yes, it is all 10 of them.
Hey, that's a good one to reference.
Oops, all tips and strings.
Sorry, my cottage neighbor stopped by like 20 minutes before 7:30. Well, 7:10 then, I guess. And he was like, "Oh, I wanted to see the bolt motors that you have hanging in your garage because I think there's somebody that might be interested in them. I want to get the numbers off of them." And like, okay, that took nearly 20 minutes. Like, oh my god, my tea's getting cold. And I have to record.
They have app enabled electronic temperature control mugs that we saw the other day while we were at Best Buy. And I was like, that is so extra. Like,
I can't wait for someone to hack the Internet of Things to make my tea cold.
yeah.
That's horrible. Uh-huh.
Or you get your kid's temp hot chocolate that suddenly turns, scalding hot.
Yeah.
Because, yes.
Oh, I want to play this game.
Here's the thing, Ryan. You can.
But how?
I'm glad that you asked. We have a website. It's descentintomidnight.com.
What?
You can find all of our information, including a live playtest packet, online.
Wow. Tell me more.
Wait, there's more.
What?
You can also, in addition to playing this game, give us playtest feedback.
Wow. Can I?
There's Absolutely you can. There is a form that you can fill out right now, answering some simple questions about your experience reading or playing Descent Into Midnight.
Oh, man. I need to get all over that.
It's good.
Did you ever see that episode of Animaniacs where they're going around trying to get people to take the surveys?
Mm-mm.
Would you like to take a survey? And they go around and they're pestering people, and it's classic.
That's awesome. Oh man, I haven't seen that show in decades.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily age well, but it was a lot of fun at the time.
Yeah. Well, that's just silly.
Yeah.
Well, how about this?
The rest of us all have a thing, so we could. You could count down in your track, and then
I'll do a 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then you just click, and I'll just line that up. How's that sound?
Because you did miss some quality content.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, clicky.
Okay.
That's a very distinct waveform. I've never recorded that on my Audacity before.
Oh yeah, because you always do it before we record.
I know. All right. 37 minutes later, we are ready.
excellent.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so, any questions before we start?
I can't say
All language
on this podcast, can I?
You cannot.
Well,
All language.
You can get it all out now, or you can wait until the end. We recorded with John Adamus, and he held it in, and I was really proud of him.
And then it was 2 minutes straight.
Are you ready?
Heck.
yeah.
Yeah, what the heck?
G. Willikers.
Good golly. Oh boy.
Yeah.
How about a different play?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I love Cheaper by the Dozen enough that would be be like, it's bad, but it's worth it.
The one thing it had going for it is it had a huge cast and lots of female roles with just a couple of guys. So
yeah, that works.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
Welcome to Curtain Cast, where we draw the shade on all your favorite movies.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a good tagline, too.
So welcome to Character Creation Cast, a show where we discuss and create characters, the best part of role-playing games.
That's our job.
Color-coded, it says right at the top.
Color-coded.
Except that one time
I don't like rules.
We didn't want to do that. Remember, we forgot to switch we didn't want to switch the colors back, and then we were so confused. I couldn't handle that I wasn't purple.
Yep.
I have to say that a little tiny part of me is glad that I'm winning the t-shirt race against Rich, I think, at this point, right? Like, has he been on yet?
He's been on once.
He did Blue Planet.
Oh, okay. So we're tied now.
We're tied now.
Yeah.
What is this t-shirt race?
When we first did our survey to see like if people were interested in being on the show and what kind of games they wanted to talk about, Rich Howard filled out our survey 7 times. And I forget if 7 was the number, but we said at some point after you'd been on so many times, you would get a t-shirt.
Yeah, I think it was 6 appearances.
Yeah,
we gave him one appearance of wiggle room.
Yes.
So y'all know that I've written like 20 games, right? Like I'm sure at least 6 of those have character creation in them.
Well, then you can beat Rich to the t-shirt.
Exactly.
We actually have t-shirts now too.
That's true. And we lost Taylor.
Oh no.
Oh, we did?
No, he's still here. It's just, I mean, his video feed is still here.
Oh, okay. Oh, there he is. I put something in chat.
I am going to, use this as an opportunity to like loudly drink things into the microphone.
Oh, there you go. I'll save
I'm hoping that the microphone's not picking up the dog snores.
It's definitely some sort of underwater sound there.
Yeah. Well, I had to kick the cat out because he will get all up in the business if he is not being paid attention to.
That makes sense.
Yeah, the dog has to be in here because otherwise she sits outside the door and moans until I open it. Even though there's 6 other people in this house, she has to sit outside my door. She's outside the door every morning when I get up, waiting for me.
Aww.
That's loyalty.
I won't let her sleep in here because she gets up at 4.
Ugh.
Yikes.
Yeah, I'm not about that.
That's a bad time to get up.
It is a bad time. You know what? I mean, to be completely honest, any time is a bad time to get up. But, maybe that's just personal preference. There is no good time to wake up.
Sorry about that.
Welcome back.
Oh, I'm muted. Okay, but I am back.
All right.
And I'm sorry, I was interrupting Richard right when he was about to skewer how horrible I've been as a collaborator.
Yeah, he said some nasty things about you while you were gone.
It was really terrible, I'm sure.
Well, we'll make sure to cut those so nobody ever hears them but us.
Yes.
I am recording.
I am with the waveforms recording thereof.
Gain's really low for some reason.
Mine seems low too.
Hello?
But I have not touched it.
No. Maybe it's just like not close enough to my mouth.
I don't know.
Hello?
Maybe.
Microphone?
Hello. Oh, those are very jagged waveforms.
Perhaps if I talk in a louder voice. Yeah, no, actually that looks better if I talk like if I'm not like, hey Ryan.
Hey Amelia.
Hey Ryan, welcome to Series 18.
Series 18, everybody. It's okay.
It's okay, it's gonna be fine. We're not stressed. Don't
curl up with a blanket and have some nice hot cocoa and
listen to our story of fish horror.
Yep. It'll be fine.
Okay.
Let us blow your minds just a little bit. Okay. All right. Here we go. I'll do a 5 count.